Hey everyone, this is Alpaco and I wanted to sketch what I would want in an Olympus Cinema Camera. For lack of a better naming scheme, I'm just calling it an EM1C. First, the sensor. I don't want or need anything more than 9 to 12 megapixels. The Sony a7S III and pretty much all the cinema cameras that is at 6K or 8K are less than 15 megapixels. The Arri Alexa isn't even a 4K sensor. When you have a smaller sensor, space is limited, so a lower megapixel sensor is just better in low light. If it was also backside illuminated, it would make this thing excellent in any low light situation. Another feature that I would like to see adapted is dual gain output. So far, only Arri and Canon have chosen to adapt this practice. The difference between dual native ISO and dual gain output is dual native ISO has two sets of native ISO for a cleaner image at those two ISO points. Dual gain records information at the cleanest point of the shadows and highlights at the same time and outputs a clean image that way. The smaller sensor can benefit from this and can potentially have more dynamic range. The smaller sensor also has the advantage of less heat and computing power compared to the larger sensors of the Arri and Canon. Since Canon has come out and stated they will start producing sensors for other manufacturers, and OMDS stated they will design their own sensors, I think it would be a fantastic idea for OMDS to have Canon manufacture their sensors. This would be funny to see because Panasonic buys Sony sensors now that they no longer produce the sensors themselves. Taking out the mechanical shutter would save enough space to be able to place an ND filter system. The body would surely have to be a bit thicker, but that's something that I want in a cinema camera. Both the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro and the Canon C70 have relatively small form factors, and both are able to fit ND filters. This camera has a smaller sensor, so I think this is definitely doable. Using Lidar or a depth sensor would be a great idea for OMDS to do. Now, it may seem expensive, but cell phone companies have been using secondary sensors for a long time now, and OMDS really needs to be aggressive in their progress. Having a Lidar or some sort of depth sensor can help AI judge the depth much better. Phones use this to create artificial bokeh, which could be a neat feature, but I'd like this to be used for better autofocus, other AI features, and more importantly, for better manual focus assist. Where Canon has that two arrows that line up thing, I'd like a digital split prism focus view as a manual focus tool. This will be very handy when you're using manual only lenses like all cinema lenses. I really love IBIS because I hate gimbals, so I'd appreciate keeping the IBIS even if this is a cinema camera. I think the FX3 is the only cinema camera that actually has IBIS. I understand that it's not as effective as gimbals, but for the run and gun filmmaker that's not wanting to use tripods, this is very effective. I love that the FX3 and C70 does not need a cage to be rigged. I'm not a fan of cages, but I need a cage for a lot of the accessories that attach. So I'd love for a quarter 20 mounts placed around the camera in the same vein as the FX3. I'm not a big EVF user at all, but I understand a lot of people still do. So for those people, it would be nice to have a detachable EVF. Olympus used to have a detachable EVF that I thought was pretty great at the time when I used Olympus pens. This one could have all the best EVF specs while being adjustable. I really want the camera to have the option to be able to record with XLRs or mini XLRs. Panasonic and Sony have a top handle that attaches to their Todd shoes, and the Panasonic GH4 used to have a grip that had XLR inputs. I would like a grip that gives us this option. The grip should also be able to be used as a battery grip, unlike the Panasonic GH4 one. I think it can really save space by making the battery holder external. This would make it more like higher end cinema cameras like the Canon C70. I would prefer this holder to use Sony NPF batteries or Canon BP batteries so that it can power this thing for most of a shoot. I think it's fantastic that the Sony a7S III and the FX3 both use dual-purpose slots, so the option to use standard SD cards or CFExpress Type-A is given to the consumer. This imaginary cinema camera should utilize that CFExpress slot by recording ProRes internally, as well as other formats like the ones found in the Canon C70 and Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro. Hell, I'd love it if it could shoot in compressed RAW like how the Sigma FP and Blackmagics can. A full HDMI port added with locks would be awesome. I've damaged several of my original Blackmagic Pocket's HDMI ports, and I really don't want to go through that again. This is why I have an HDMI lock on my rig for my Olympus OM-D E-M1 Mark III. Having Ethernet would be very handy for those who use cameras to stream. These features are able to fit on small cameras like the Zcam E2C and the Panasonic BGH-1. They should also produce their own EF adapters. Olympus have produced adapters for themselves before. The MMF series adapted older 4/3 lenses to micro 4/3 cameras. The Metabones 0.64 times adapter won't work on Olympus bodies because of how thick the shutter is, but I've read that the 0.71 times is optimal to get the best out of EF lenses, so no big loss. Both Metabones and viltrox have great adapters, but it's limited on Olympus bodies as they don't have full functionality of their autofocus features. It would be amazing if OMDS made their own adapters that give full functionality to EF lenses. Both Zcam and Canon have made their own adapters for EF lenses. I know Canon is scrapping a lot of their EF lenses, but let's be honest, the EF mount has been around for a very long time. There are a lot of people like me that are not going to get rid of them, not while I can still use them. The last set of things I want in this cinema camera is that it only takes minimal photos, enough for a decent still photo, and that's it. I want this to be a proper cinema camera. If I want to take photos, I'll take out one of my EM1s. The cinema camera doesn't need a dial that will change it to any photo modes because there shouldn't be any other photo modes. The only dials and buttons on this camera will access just what I need to shoot video. A top dial for peaking, waveform, zebra, and other display features like manual focus assists, a dedicated white balance and ISO button, and the dials for aperture and shutter angle. The front two buttons for ND plus and minus. Because of the lack of photo features, the menu should be much cleaner and easier to access the things I need. I love the Blackmagic menu system, so an Olympus Cinema spin of that for this camera would be great. The closest camera that is out now that has all the stuff that I want is the Panasonic GH5S. It may not have IBIS, but I'm willing to overlook that for other features that it has. I was excited when I heard about the Panasonic BGH-1 because I thought it was going to be the Panasonic AF100 replacement. It wasn't, and it wasn't even close. What I'm hoping is for OM Digital Solutions to make the Canon C70 version of the AF100 with more emphasis on semi-modularity. Some customers don't need certain things, and that's a great way to cut costs in the camera. They can instead sell those other extra features for those that want it in the form of the detachable EVF and XLR battery grip. They aren't limited by the Olympus brand, which is what their speed bump was for the last few years. I know at this point you're probably thinking, just buy an FX3 or C70. Well, honestly, I probably will do that by the end of the year or early next year. I love my Olympus cameras and I plan on keeping my EM1 III for as long as I can. I'm not where I want to be regarding income to justify buying a cinema camera yet. Right now, my camera has to be something that does everything. It has to be my photo and video camera for work, my personal photo and video camera, my short film experimental camera, and my personal leisure camera. I can't afford a camera for each of these categories I use cameras for, which is why the Olympus OM-D E-M1 Mark II and now Mark III has always been my preferred camera. It does all types of photography really well and still taking fantastic enough video for small social media work and YouTube stuff like this. I'm very patient. I'm in no hurry to get a cinema camera. I'll wait to see what OM Digital Solutions does early next year. If I really need a cinema camera for those rare jobs that I need one, then renting is still a viable option for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day.